sanctuary mobs are bringing war to Portland, but here come the troops.
Here we go again. Oh, looks like there's another skirmish.
Well, that didn't take long. They got 2 people, 3 Antifa rioters. One of them wearing a costume.
Portland just turned into a war zone. In a surprise pre-dawn raid, DHS agents stormed a hidden Antifa stronghold that had been operating for months beneath the city's streets. Over 150 leaders were taken down, stockpiles of weapons seized, and entire networks dismantled. But what they uncovered inside that base left even federal agents speechless. Let's break it down. The federal storm descends. The streets of Portland, Oregon have become something that most Americans never thought they'd witness on their own soil. A genuine urban battlefield where federal agents clash nightly with masked militants, where the air fills with the acrid smoke of tear gas and commercial-grade fireworks, and where the very concept of law and order seems to hang by the thinnest of threads. What began as scattered protests outside a single immigration and customs enforcement facility has metastasized into something far more sinister, far more organized, and far more dangerous than anyone in the mainstream media wants you to believe. This isn't just about immigration policy anymore. This is about domestic terrorism taking root in an American city and the federal government's decisive response to crush it. The timeline of escalation reads like something out of a war correspondent's notebook, rather than a domestic news report. It all started back on June 4th, 2025, when the first protesters arrived at the ICE field office on Moody Avenue in southwest Portland. These weren't your grandmother's peaceful demonstrators holding candles and singing, "We shall overcome." No, these were coordinated actors, many dressed head to toe in black tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks and bandanas, forming human chains to physically block federal vehicles from entering and exiting the facility. Within days, what had been advertised as symbolic resistance transformed into something far more aggressive and calculated. By mid-June, the situation had deteriorated dramatically. Crowds swelling to over 1,000 strong began deploying tactics that went far beyond peaceful civil disobedience. They weren't just chanting and holding signs, they were hurling commercial-grade fireworks at federal officers, launching projectiles including bricks and bottles, and using high-powered lasers to deliberately blind agents attempting to maintain order. On June 20th alone, 6 individuals were charged with assaulting federal officers after they used improvised battering rams fashioned from stolen stop signs to attack the facility's gates. This wasn't protest. This was premeditated assault on federal property and personnel. But here's where the story takes a truly alarming turn, one that the legacy media has been desperately trying to downplay or outright ignore. The Department of Homeland Security didn't just observe random acts of violence from disorganized troublemakers. What they discovered was something far more chilling: a coordinated network of Antifa cells operating with military-level precision, complete with supply chains, reconnaissance operations, and what can only be described as a command and control structure that belies their claims of being a leaderless movement. Independent journalists on the ground documented exactly what federal authorities were confronting night after night.
All these people right here are the Antifa of Portland, all in black.
You come back, I'm gonna fucking smoke you, dude.
Really?
Yes.
You have a sniper lasered on you right now. Stop it.
We're Portland. This is our mother. Keep it weird.
Portland is set to erupt right now. You have thousands of people out here protesting here in the streets of Portland, Oregon. Donald Trump has said this is war ravaged and is sending into the streets of Oregon, the federal government, and has said the feds can use full force against Antifa, who is now declared as a terrorist organization. Right now, you have thousands of people here on the streets yelling, "Fight back" to the federal government. And here in Portland, Oregon, you have an ICE detention facility center that has been occupied by Antifa and protesters for more than 100 days. And assaults on ICE agents is up 1,000% since Trump took office for his second term.
The federal response, which began tentatively in June with just 50 personnel providing basic facility protection, rapidly evolved into a substantial deployment. By late September, following President Trump's executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, the Department of Homeland Security had surged its presence to between 400 and 600 federal agents. These weren't just standard security guards or local police backup. These were tactical units from Border Patrol's elite BORTAC teams, FBI Joint Task Forces specializing in domestic extremism, and Customs and Border Protection agents trained for high-threat environments. The authorization came directly from the top. On September 27th, President Trump made the decision explicit, publicly declaring his intention to deploy up to 500 federal troops to Portland, describing the city as being under siege by Antifa mobs, and promising to use full force to protect federal assets and personnel. This wasn't political grandstanding. This was the commander-in-chief, recognizing that a major American city had been allowed to descend into chaos and that the federal government had a constitutional duty to restore order when local authorities either couldn't or wouldn't do so themselves. The president himself made the situation crystal clear in his own words.
Or Portland, Oregon. I mean, every time I look at that place, the place is burning down. There's fires all over the place. When a store owner, there are very few of them left, but when a store owner rebuilds a store, they build it out of plywood, and they don't put up storefronts anymore. They just put wood up because they know it's going to be ripped down.
The tactical deployment revealed just how serious the threat had become. DHS established a 100-yard security buffer around the ICE facility, with federal agents equipped with non-lethal crowd control equipment, including tear gas launchers, pepperball systems, and flashbang grenades. National Guard reconnaissance units provided overwatch from elevated positions, and by early October, armored vehicles began appearing on Portland's streets, a sight that would have been unthinkable just months earlier in what was supposed to be a peaceful American city. The resource allocation told its own story about the severity of the situation. Over $20 million was spent by mid-October on overtime, tactical equipment, and logistics support for federal operations. 60% of that funding went toward tactical gear, body armor, riot shields, gas masks, and communication equipment. Another 25% funded intelligence gathering operations, including digital forensics teams working to trace the networks behind what authorities were increasingly describing as organized domestic terrorism. But what really sent shockwaves through law enforcement circles wasn't just the scale of the deployment, it was what they were finding as they began to systematically investigate and dismantle the Antifa infrastructure in Portland. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's visit to the ICE facility on October 7th coincided with the dismantling of what protesters had euphemistically called an autonomous zone, but what federal agents described as a forward operating base for sustained urban warfare. The encampment, located in what protesters dubbed the Elizabeth Carruthers Park Annex, had grown far beyond a simple tent city. Federal agents arriving at dawn with excavators and sanitation crews didn't just find sleeping bags and protest signs. They found supply caches that included medical kits sophisticated enough to treat serious injuries, communication equipment for coordinating multi-site actions, and stockpiles of materials that could be quickly weaponized, commercial-grade smoke grenades, high-powered lasers, and components for improvised incendiary devices. The operation to clear the encampment on October 8th resulted in 4 immediate arrests for non-compliance, but more significantly, it yielded critical intelligence about the network's logistics. Agents discovered detailed plans for resupply operations, encrypted communication channels, and perhaps most disturbingly, evidence of coordination with similar cells across the country. This wasn't just Portland's problem anymore. This was a national security threat that happened to be concentrated in one particularly permissive urban environment. The seizures painted a picture of an organization that had learned from previous confrontations and was continuously adapting its tactics. Federal inventories documented the recovery of 7 high-powered green lasers, several mounted on tripods for stability, specifically designed to cause temporary or even permanent blindness in officers. These weren't cheap laser pointers bought on a whim. These were 500 milliwatt devices purchased deliberately for their capacity to incapacitate, costing upwards of $50 each, and sourced from online retailers. The threat these weapons posed became viscerally clear when an Antifa militant confronted a journalist filming the protests, threatening violence, only to be warned that federal snipers had him targeted from rooftop positions, a defensive posture necessitated by the very laser attacks and projectile assaults that had become routine.
What are you doing? Why are you so mad? I didn't do anything.
You did.
What did I do?
Walk.
I haven't done anything.
Walk. Do not come back.
Watch out.
You come back, I'm f***ing smoke you, dude.
Really?
Yes, really. I'm
Why?
gonna smash that fucking camera.
Stop it. Stop. Sir, stop it.
Stop sticking your camera at the people's f***ing face.
I have the right to be here.
Okay, did I say?
I have the right to be here. I have the right to film. You have DHS watching you right there, lasered on you. You have a sniper lasered on you right
I
now.
don't give a fuck.
Stop it.
Stop sticking your camera in people's face.
I didn't do anything wrong. You have a sniper on you right now. You have a sniper on you right now.
You see, he's like, yo, be careful, dude. Look at this.
6 improvised explosive devices and projectiles were also recovered, including commercial smoke grenades, the military-grade M18 type, and fireworks that had been modified with nails and other metal fragments to maximize their capacity to injure. One particularly disturbing find from June 24th involved a smoke grenade that had been thrown directly at a CBP van, and in October, agents recovered 3 firework tubes still containing black powder residue, abandoned during a dispersal operation, but clearly intended for use use as weapons rather than celebration. The scale of what federal authorities were uncovering demanded a response that went beyond traditional law enforcement. This required a comprehensive counterterrorism approach, and President Trump's September 22nd executive order provided exactly that framework. The designation of Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization wasn't symbolic. It unlocked enhanced surveillance capabilities, expanded prosecutorial tools, and most importantly, it sent an unmistakable message that political violence would no longer be tolerated, downplayed, or excused by sympathetic local officials. What unfolded on Portland's streets night after night demonstrated exactly why federal intervention became absolutely necessary. The chaos was escalating beyond anything local authorities could or would handle.
Sanctuary mobs are bringing war to Portland, but here come the troops.
Go again. Oh, looks like there's another skirmish.
Oh, that didn't take long. They got 2 people, 3 Antifa rioters. One of them wearing a costume. Oh, this guy doesn't want to go down without a fight. Is that cheering? There's people cheering.
2 people on the ground. 3 people
Wow,
on the
3
ground.
people on the ground.
Yes, sir.
I hear some USA chants. This is like a UFC event.
Crowd here. People
This is
chanting.
crazy.
They got him.
Ooh. Oh, wow,
him.
look at that. So if the rioters, they lost round 1. Oh, there's another one. Oh, round 2. Oh, round 2
And there was
started
another one.
right away. It's not taking long, man. This is like nonstop action here in Portland.
But understanding how we reached this critical juncture requires examining the sophisticated infrastructure that Antifa had built over more than a decade, a network far more organized and dangerous than their defenders want you to believe. Unmasking the network. The designation of Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization represented far more than political messaging. It opened investigative pathways that revealed the true scope and sophistication of what had been operating in America's progressive cities for years. What federal investigators discovered in Portland wasn't a spontaneous uprising of concerned citizens. What they found was a decentralized but highly coordinated network that had been refining its tactics for over a decade, learning from every confrontation and growing bolder with each instance of local authorities looking the other way or actively enabling their activities. Portland's Antifa movement traces its origins to 2007, when Rose City Antifa was founded as one of the first formal chapters in the United States. Initially, the group positioned itself as a research organization documenting and exposing white nationalist activity in the Pacific Northwest. Their early methods involved creating detailed dossiers on neo-Nazi organizers, publishing information on websites and in underground zines, and organizing counter-protests to disrupt far-right gatherings. By 2010, Rose City Antifa had evolved beyond mere documentation, coordinating with groups like the Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front to physically confront and shut down events like the 2011 Aryan Nations rally. But here's what makes the current situation so dangerous. What began as reactive counter-protest has transformed into proactive political violence, targeting not just fringe extremists, but mainstream conservative voices, law enforcement personnel, and federal immigration officials simply trying to enforce the law. The structure that investigators uncovered in 2025 revealed an organization that had learned to exploit the weaknesses in America's legal and political systems with ruthless efficiency. The network operates through what they call affinity groups, small cells of 5 to 15 individuals bound by personal trust rather than formal membership roles. These groups plan their operations autonomously, but coordinate through encrypted messaging apps like Signal and communicate through anarchist news platforms like It's Going Down, which launched in 2015 specifically to amplify Portland-based actions to a national audience. Funding comes through mutual aid networks, including crowdfunding campaigns disguised as legal defense funds and community support initiatives, with Rose City Antifa's own financial reports showing expenditures on bail money and medical supplies rather than traditional organizational overhead. The black bloc tactic, where protesters dress identically in all-black clothing, masks, and helmets, serves a dual purpose that goes far beyond simple anonymity. Yes, it makes individual identification difficult, but more importantly, it creates a legal nightmare for prosecutors. When everyone looks identical, defense attorneys can argue reasonable doubt about who specifically committed which crime. And the uniformity you see at every single protest is no accident. It's a deliberate tactical choice designed to protect the group while enabling violence. Journalists documenting the Portland protests captured this coordination perfectly.
So this right here is the ICE Detention Facility Center, where they do hold illegal migrants once ICE has gone out and got them. And right here you see all the protesters. These guys, for instance, are all in black. They do not want to show their face. Those are potential members of Antifa. Antifa has had control of this location outside, occupying it for the past 100 days or so, and now this is set to be their rally.
Federal prosecutors learned this lesson painfully in 2017 when they attempted to charge over 200 protesters with conspiracy for wearing black bloc during Trump's inauguration. Most of those cases collapsed, and the defendants subsequently won a $1.6 million settlement for wrongful prosecution. But the tactics evolved far beyond defensive legal strategies. What investigators discovered in Portland in 2025 was an organization that had weaponized information warfare with devastating effectiveness. On July 10th, 2025, Rose City Counterinfo and the Crustian Daily published a joint post that sent shockwaves through law enforcement nationwide. The post contained names, photographs, home addresses, and license plate numbers of 28 ICE officers stationed in Portland. It included detailed maps showing routes to officers' homes in suburbs like Beaverton and provided links to encrypted signal channels where supporters could share additional information about federal personnel. DHS condemned this as illegal harassment on July 11th, warning that federal charges under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act would follow. The consequences were immediate and terrifying. By July 15th, at least 5 officers reported slashed tires and graffiti reading "snitch" spray-painted on their vehicles. One officer's family received dozens of harassing phone calls traced to burner apps linked to Portland IP addresses. This wasn't protest. This was targeted intimidation designed to make federal law enforcement afraid to do their jobs. The sophistication of the operation became even more apparent as investigators traced the logistics behind the street-level violence. During the protests, groups used U-locks to chain ICE facility gates, deployed battering rams fashioned from repurposed street signs to test fence integrity, and coordinated volleys of projectiles, bricks sourced from construction sites, commercial fireworks purchased from legal retailers, and bear spray bought in bulk from outdoor supply stores. Portland Police Bureau reports from June 29th documented 12 officers sustaining injuries from thrown objects during a single night of confrontation. The escalation pattern revealed deliberate strategic thinking. June began with symbolic blockades and daytime vigils that drew 200 to 300 participants. By June 14th, after a peaceful march of 10,000 organized by immigrant rights groups, smaller contingents peeled off after dark to deploy lasers against patrol vehicles and throw bricks through facility windows. DHS logged 3 assaults that night, including a direct strike on an officer's helmet that could have caused serious injury or death. The violence intensified throughout the summer. By June 29th, DHS reported a 300% monthly increase in assaults on federal officers. Protesters had erected plywood barriers reinforced with zip-tied shopping carts around the ICE entrance, effectively halting operations for 48 hours. A particularly brazen attack on June 20th involved a protester wielding a rebar pole against a security gate, injuring an agent's hand and earning that individual felony assault charges. July brought tactical refinement. After the July 10th doxing leak, incidents of targeted vandalism surged, with an officer's home being egged on July 12th based on information from the published dossiers. Assaults diversified beyond thrown objects. Pepper spray volleys on July 15th hospitalized 2 officers with respiratory complications, while battering rams tested fence weak points on July 20th. The so-called autonomous zone became operational, with tents and medical stations enabling 24/7 presence that forced ICE to resort to helicopter transport for detainees who couldn't be safely moved by ground vehicles. September marked the apex of violence. Following Trump's September 22nd terrorist designation, protesters mobilized in force. On September 26th, 400 demonstrators blockaded all facility access points, using fireworks to create explosive diversions and hurling cinder blocks from nearby construction sites at armored vehicles. DHS reported 15 assaults in a single night, a staggering 1,000% year-over-year increase. By September 30th, the blockade had grown to 1,200 participants, with chained barricades completely encircling the facility and halting deportation operations for 3 consecutive days. But despite Antifa's claims of being merely an ideology rather than an organization, the evidence on the ground told a completely different story. When you observe the protesters, the coordination becomes undeniable. The matching uniforms, the synchronized tactics, the shared equipment, and when confronted about this obvious organizational structure, their responses reveal the deliberate deception at the heart of their movement.
What's the need for all of the black?
The need for all of the black is to protect everybody who is around here, who is also wanting to protect their identity. I don't want my face to be out there. I don't want these people to see this and then come and persecute me for standing out and holding a sign that says silence is compliance.
Yeah, because now the sun's
I'm
gone
using
down,
my voice.
and we just
I am
have
not-
people in all black, pretty much, for the most part. Majority
Exactly.
are in black.
This keeps people safe.
On the umbrella, it says "kill yourself."
The federal response necessarily evolved to match the threat. October brought intensified enforcement operations, including the dismantling of the autonomous zone on October 8 that I described earlier. But enforcement was just one prong of a broader strategy. Intelligence gathering became paramount, with FBI digital forensics teams working to map the network's structure, funding sources, and leadership. This is where claims about 150-plus Antifa leaders arrested require careful examination. DHS's September 26th announcement referenced dozens of arrests nationwide, a figure that was subsequently amplified in White House briefings to suggest Portland-centric mass roundups. The reality, while significant, was more measured. Actual high-profile arrests in Portland numbered fewer than a dozen through mid-October, though each represented a significant blow to the network's operational capability. On June 20th, 6 individuals were charged with assault, including Jay Ramirez, identified by authorities as a Rose City Antifa veteran previously doxxed by conservative journalists in 2018. Ramirez was held on $50,000 bail for his role in the gate ramming incident. The July 11th doxing investigation led to one arrest, S. Ellis, 29, of Rose City Counter-Info, charged with cyber-stalking after forensic analysis of her laptop revealed the compiled ICE dossiers. She was released pending trial, highlighting the challenges in securing detention for what prosecutors must prove are serious threats rather than protected speech. September 26th yielded 3 Portland arrests for coordinated fireworks assaults, including Monsieur Torres, linked through facial recognition to 2020 federal courthouse actions. October saw continued enforcement. On October 4th, 2 individuals were arrested for pepper spray volleys, with one, K. Nguyen, tied to encampment logistics through cell phone location data. The cumulative effect, while not reaching triple digits in Portland alone, represented a systematic degradation of the network's operational capacity. The arrest procedures themselves reflected the seriousness with which federal authorities now viewed the Antifa threat. Tactical teams used zip ties for immediate restraint, transported suspects to mobile command posts for processing, and employed facial recognition technology to cross-reference against Antifa watch lists compiled over years of protest monitoring. Suspects were held for up to 48 hours before transfer to federal detention facilities in Portland or Seattle, with charges typically filed under federal assault statutes carrying significantly harsher penalties than state equivalents. And what made these arrests particularly effective was catching Antifa members in the act of violence, with overwhelming video evidence documenting their crimes.
Sounds like they're about to open up the gates and the feds are about to come out. You have a bunch of them right in here right now, and they're gonna come through right here. It looks like a van or somebody's gonna be moving through. And you also have a Black Hawk flying around the entire perimeter right now. And what are you gonna do when the feds come out? They're coming.
We need a mass line. We need to shut them down. We need to be prepared to sacrifice at all costs. This is a red line. This is the moment to sacrifice, but be smart.
They're coming out right now. Here comes the police.
You get some punk bitches on the clearance map. Run the hand and show your wife what a real man is. They're gonna push out this private. Hey, do that shit to me, you little fucking man. Do that here.
This guy's yelling at him now.
I ain't scared of your ass. I ain't scared of your ass. You don't know who I am. Your commander will pull you back when they know who the fuck I am. Bitch.
Now they're shooting over here. Now they're all retreating back. Now they're shooting.
This scale, dozens nationally versus low double digits locally, highlights Portland's role as a testing ground for the Antifa designation, with potential for escalation if violence persists. But beyond the arrests and tactical responses, these enforcement actions revealed something even more disturbing: the extent to which local government had become complicit in enabling domestic terrorism on American soil. The reckoning and what comes next. The federal government's response to Portland's Antifa problem represents something unprecedented in modern American domestic policy, a sitting president explicitly ordering military-style deployments to counter what he has formally designated as domestic terrorism within a major American city. The implications extend far beyond Oregon's borders, setting precedents that will shape how the federal government responds to political violence for decades to come. But perhaps more importantly, it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how permissive governance and ideological sympathy have allowed domestic domestic extremism to flourish in jurisdictions where local authorities either couldn't or wouldn't maintain basic order. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's October 7th visit to Portland crystallized the federal government's hardened position. During a contentious meeting with Mayor Keith Wilson and a subsequent White House roundtable on October 8th, Noem pulled no punches in her assessment. She accused Oregon Governor Tina Kotek and Mayor Wilson of covering up terrorism by shielding protesters, stating bluntly, "Antifa terrorists are waging war on our homeland. We will bust their networks and bring every one of them to justice." The comparison Noem drew was deliberately provocative, but legally significant. At the October 8th roundtable, she equated Antifa to MS-13, Hamas, Hezbollah, organizations formerly designated as terrorist entities under U.S. law. This wasn't rhetorical flourish. It signaled that federal prosecutors would now have access to enhanced surveillance tools, RICO statutes designed to dismantle criminal organizations, and terrorism-specific charging guidelines that dramatically increase potential sentences. DHS under President Trump will not allow domestic terrorists to overrun our cities, Noem declared, promising to hunt down network leaders with the same vigor applied to international threats. President Trump's own statements reinforced this uncompromising approach. On September 27th, he described Portland as a war zone, requiring troops to stop the Antifa siege. The language was deliberate: war zone, siege, full force, framing the situation not as civil unrest requiring de-escalation, but as active combat necessitating decisive military intervention. His October 9th comments during the roundtable pushed back against local narratives, attempting to minimize the violence. "Antifa thugs have repeatedly attacked our offices. We are using full force." The legal framework supporting this response extends beyond simple assault charges. The September 22nd executive order labels Antifa a militarist anarchist enterprise, threatening governmental functions, directing federal agencies to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle the network through asset freezes and coordinated prosecutions. The follow-up National Security Presidential Memorandum, NSPM 7, on September 25th, expanded this mandate to include nonprofits that provide material support to political violence, potentially enabling RICO applications against organizations that funnel money to Antifa cells through mutual aid networks and bail funds. The administration made absolutely clear that this terrorist designation was not symbolic. It carried the full weight of federal counterterrorism law.
Well, Antifa is going to be designated a domestic terrorist organization. The president intends to sign that executive order very soon as it's drafted, as soon as today, later this afternoon. And this is something the president campaigned on because we have seen a rise in violence perpetuated by Antifa radical people across this country who subscribe to this group. And unfortunately, it's gone widely uncovered by many in the legacy media. It also went completely ignored by the previous administration. Not anymore. Not only, as you mentioned, were the bullet casings subscribed with Antifa mottos, if you will, in the heinous assassination of Charlie, but there have also been more examples than I could read off for you here in this briefing room today of violence from Antifa.
The broader policy implications cannot be overstated. Trump's deportation focus, targeting 1 million annual removals with Oregon's quota at 10,000, has created a feedback loop where aggressive enforcement provokes resistance, which justifies further escalation, which hardens both sides into increasingly militant positions. This dynamic threatens to spread beyond Portland to every sanctuary jurisdiction in America, potentially normalizing federal military deployments as a standard response to local non-cooperation with immigration enforcement. The September 27th troop authorization, which bypassed state consent by invoking emergency powers, drew immediate legal challenges from the ACLU and civil liberties organizations. They argue it mirrors 2020's Portland precedents, but with immigration as the wedge issue, potentially setting the stage for what critics describe as a national policing force that can be deployed to any city where the president perceives insufficient local enforcement of federal priorities. The judicial response has been mixed. A federal judge temporarily blocked full National Guard mobilization on October 6th, citing overreach concerns, but an October 8th appeals court ruling upheld the federalization while barring immediate Portland deployment, a compromise that satisfied neither side while keeping 150 National Guard members on standby for rapid deployment if violence escalates further. The political ramifications are equally significant. Portland's sanctuary city policies, upheld in August 2025, have led to 40% fewer local tips to ICE, prompting federal funding threats of $100 million in withheld grants for law enforcement and infrastructure. This battle battle over sanctuary jurisdictions has become a proxy war for larger questions about federalism, states' rights, and the extent to which local governments can nullify federal law through non-cooperation, questions that ultimately may require Supreme Court resolution. But what about the community caught in the crossfire? The reality on the ground in Portland reveals a stark disconnect between federal rhetoric and resident experience. While Trump described the city as burning and bombed out during his October 9th roundtable, Portland Police Bureau reports indicate protests remain geographically contained to approximately 100 yards around the ICE facility, with no spillover violence into residential neighborhoods or the downtown core. Nevertheless, perception drives reality in tourism and business. Hotel bookings in the South Waterfront District dropped 25% in September, per Travel Portland data, and small businesses near the facility reported 15% revenue declines from customers afraid to frequent the area. An October 10th OPB poll showed 62% of Portland residents feeling less safe due to federal troop presence, with immigrant families in East Portland curtailing public outings and schools, noting a 10% attendance dip among Latino students fearful of potential ICE encounters. What makes the situation particularly egregious is that Portland's local government has effectively abdicated its responsibility to protect residents living near the ICE facility. The Portland Police Bureau's refusal to enforce basic laws has left elderly residents and families trapped in a nightmare scenario where they can't sleep, can't walk their own streets safely, and can't get help when they call 911. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.